In fact, Dad wanted me to go to the Army at West Point. We lived near there in northern New Jersey. And I saw a naval aviator come into town with greens and a brown pair of pants and a gold set of wings, this kind of gold. I said, I think I want one. I'll do that. So I went to the Naval Academy and studied at West Point.
And from the Naval Academy, it was Pensacola and then combat and a little bit of everything, wasn't it?
Had a taste of just about everything.
Somehow or another, though, you wound up being an astronaut. How did that happen?
That is probably a scary recollection, but I can recall going to Washington, looking at 3 men on a stage, 2 engineers and a shrink. We'd learned to say shrink. I think it was really a psychologist. In fact, I saw him as Bob Vose. I just saw him recently.
Here, you can call him anything you like,
No.
Wally.
Bob knows that. I've called him a shrink his whole life. These 3 men tried to convince me how neat it would be to get in a rocket or in a capsule on top of a rocket. I said, no way. I'm an aviator. I'm a hotshot flyboy. I'm a test pilot. I really want to get out of there. Then they said, well, don't worry. We're going to put monkeys and chimps in there first. I really want to get out of there. We didn't even volunteer. We were ordered to Washington. And that was the time to say no. I went back to Patuxent, where I was testing aircraft, talked to my peer group, and they said, look, Schirra, if you want to go higher, farther, and faster, this is the one way to do it. Okay, I'll go along for a while.
Did you ever regret that decision?
A number of times I have regretted that because I missed my Navy very much. I was trained to be a commanding officer, and NASA never understood what a commanding officer was. This was sort of a group of people with equal rank, and there were times when I asserted myself as a commanding officer, particularly in Apollo. And I recall one of my greatest presentations was from John Healy, the manager of the spacecraft, who got me this big annunciator for a ship, all ahead full, and said, from your crew, go ahead full, Schirra. And that's one of my favorite possessions.
I'll get back to that, as a matter of fact. I'd like to very much. But right now, let's go back in time. And here you are. Now you are an astronaut, early on in the training.
Now I are one.
Yes.
This was a big surprise. 7 of us sitting on a stage in Washington, D.C., with a bunch of press corps. You don't know what those people are, I know, but they were there interrogating us, and we all had these dumb answers, except for Herschel. John had a good answer, John Glenn, of course, had a good answer for almost anything. And right away we said, gee, this guy has some ideas we don't know about. And we began to realize we were becoming public features or public individuals. It was something we were not prepared for at all.
You learned in time. You even wound up being a television star in your own right.
Well, oddly enough, what happened, we were drawn into this slowly but surely. I guess my favorite memory, though, was going after that press conference, from that press conference, to the Hill, and watching senators and representatives make absolute idiots of themselves in front of all these news people. You know, look, why are they doing this? And we visited with the Senate Majority Leader, Lyndon Johnson. And then I knew what a mogul was, what a power this man was. He had an office that looked like a Hollywood set, and here we are looking around, somewhat awestricken ourselves, and our local representative or senator came in and salaamed practically. I said, my gosh, we've joined a whole new world. We haven't done a damn thing yet.
And so it was. However, once you got into Mercury, you started doing some honest engineering. So let's start with that if we can. Let's engineer the Mercury spacecraft as you lived it.
Well, when we joined the Space Task Group at Langley Air Force Base in Virginia, we all sat in this one big office, large steel desk, which is the greatest threat to mankind as an officer, to get a large steel desk. You hope for a mahogany desk, not one of these big metal slabs. We sat there saying, what are we going to do now? We've got to make this thing flyable. We're all test pilots. So we all picked various areas of concern that we felt we could individually do the best with. I got on the environmental control system, the suit system. I think Deke was on the controls, the flight controls. We all unanimously had one vote every time. We wanted a window in front of us, a window we could look through. The initial version had a little tiny round window down by your right knee and a little tiny round window up by your left shoulder. And they looked like what I would call chick sail window, little half moons when you try to look through them. You couldn't see a darn thing. That's what Shepard had to fly, because we couldn't change the windows in time.
That early in the program, did you have any real objective in mind, or were you just going to fly in space?
We felt we would put man in the loop. We wanted to replace chimpanzee. We wanted to prove we could fly the vehicle, do something that man had never done before, of course. We wanted to be sure we could do it well. We knew the tools we needed. We needed this window so we could make observations out that window to align the spacecraft with the horizon, with the star patterns, with the geographic patterns. We had to make a hand controller with this right hand We had to make it pitch, roll, and yaw. Had no room for rudder pedals. So a whole new flight control system with our hands rotating back and forth. This is a pretty difficult task.
How would you describe the engineering in the Mercury system? Good, bad, indifferent. How would you describe it?
I was amazed because Mr. Golden, the present administrator of NASA, said something about risky devices. I thought that was a very well-made machine and very, very carefully designed. I took great umbrage with his saying that. I told him that, by the way, personally. So it's not something necessarily that could be cut out of the film. He didn't know that we had gone so far with every engineer, with every detail, to get that spacecraft exactly the way we wanted, including the booster here in San Diego. We came out and visited General Dynamics, who made Atlas. I'll never forget Gus Grissom saying, "Do good work." Very poor grammar, but it got the message in. And we touched every facet of that vehicle. Went to McDonnell in St. Louis, long before it was McDonnell Douglas or now Boeing or whatever they are. The result of it was we got to know Mr. Mack. We got to know the engineers, Walter Burke, John Yardley. They're just like brothers. We worked with these men around the clock, visiting, living in St. Louis. And that kind of thing really made Mercury go. We knew what the spacecraft was like, every component of it. But the only thing we didn't know about was that escape hatch that I hit with my hand one time.
Did you really know it that well, though? I'm remembering back during that era, and I used to see Atlases go up and come back down in flames more times than one.
What we found, we man-rated the Atlas we flew. And they grounded, in fact, after John's and Scott's flight, the military Atlas, so they would have enough courage to send me up on my mission. It was flat grounded. I go off on the mission, everything works beautifully. The spacecraft reacted the way I wanted it to.